everyone, my name is Rebecca and welcome back to another episode of TJLC Explained. Today I'm going to be discussing how Sherlock's Deerstalker represents his false public persona, which goes hand in hand with the public perception that he's straight. This can basically be summed up by the phrase DFP, which was coined by Ashley Kinklock, which stands for Dark Fuck Prince. As some of you may know, I actually wrote a meta on the hat as Sherlock's public persona, but that was a while ago and some things have happened with it since then, so I'm very excited to revisit it now. So back in October 2015, we got a trailer for The Abominable Bride, which featured a scene of John shoving the Deerstalker at Sherlock.
This one.
Why? You're Sherlock Holmes, wear the damn hat.
After that, I saw Dante 57 Circles of Hell talking about how they were looking forward to someone writing a hat meta after that, and I was like, who would write a... That's a really good idea, I'm gonna write a hat meta. So thank you, Dante, for giving me one of my best ideas. At the time, a lot of us thought that 1895 was going to play a more central role in the episode than it ended up doing, so I got the specific circumstances of the scene wrong, but the symbolism was spot on, which was a really nice surprise. Okay, I gotta take this thing off, it doesn't feel right. Much better. So I'm going to give a little history about the Deerstalker. I think a lot of people already know that the Deerstalker was never explicitly mentioned in the stories, and instead was a result of the illustrations by Sidney Paget. The Deerstalker first appeared in an illustration for the Boscombe Valley Mystery, which was actually very loosely adapted in A Scandal in Belgravia, the first episode to feature the hat. It also appeared in illustrations for The Silver Blaze, and for The Final Problem, which... Okay, no, I'll get back to that later. That's for the grand finale. The point is that the Deerstalker has always been part of the public's perception of Sherlock Holmes, despite it not really having a true basis. Some other film adaptations of Holmes have played with this concept. For example, you might remember this from last week.
You saddled me with this improbable costume, which the public now expects me to wear.
That is not my doing. Blame it on the illustrator.
That's a very clever way to nod to that. Sherlock only wears the hat because he feels that's what the public expects, which goes right alongside the public's expectations that he's straight. Which brings me to one of my main points, which is that one of the coded ways to imply that someone is gay is to say that he wears a hat of someone else's choosing. Not only that, but as Graceebook added to my original post, deerstalking used to be slang for chasing after women. All of this is wrapped up in this iconic part of Sherlock's persona. Now, back in the early days of the show, people thought the writers took themselves too seriously to play around with something like this. But of course, they were totally wrong about that.
There's the magic
And here it
moment.
is.
There it is.
The magic Deerstalker moment.
It was so funny. I mean, we did the first series of this, and everyone was saying, "Oh, you're not, obviously he's never going to wear a Deerstalker." Mark and I were just thinking, "Of course he is." We did not have the Deerstalker.
Little do they know.
In fact, it was their plan from the very beginning to include the Deerstalker if given the chance, and to play with the fact that it was a forced part of Sherlock's public image.
And you know, if we do get to do more of these, and very much hope we will, we're going to get that Deerstalker in. I mean, it just doesn't.
Yes.
I don't.
You said someone will be like a paparazzi shot of him,
Yeah.
just trying it on for fun, and that's it. He's stuck.
Well, I think if he was in the middle doing something hugely heroic, and he happened to get photographed for it, and that became the image that everyone has of him, and you know, he keeps getting given them.
That's pretty close to what they ended up doing. And right from the beginning, the hat is tied to the perception that Sherlock is straight. Like 1895, the Deerstalker is something that Sherlock has to move past before he can be free to be with John. So let's actually talk about the hat on the show. It was first introduced in A Scandal in Belgravia once John's blog started getting more attention. People were waiting at the crime scene to see Sherlock, and Sherlock complained about not wanting a public image before shoving the hat on his head as a way to hide from the cameras. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect, and the hat caught on. People love it.
There's a lot of press outside, guys.
Well, they won't be interested in that.
Yeah, that was before you were an internet phenomenon. A couple of them specifically wanted photographs of you two.
God's sake. John, cover your face and walk fast.
Still, it's good for the public image. Big case like this.
Private detective, the last thing I need is a public image.
So that's where the hat as part of a false public persona comes into play. But it's also connected to the false idea that Sherlock is straight when Irene is introduced by caressing a picture of Sherlock wearing the Deerstalker. Later, John has put a picture of Sherlock wearing the hat on his blog, which really annoys Sherlock because he doesn't like being presented that way.
You've got a photograph of me wearing that hat.
People like the hat.
No, they don't. What people?
But John knows people like the hat. It's part of the way that John presents Sherlock to the public because, sadly, John believes the lies himself. That Sherlock can't feel things that way, or that he feels that way about Irene. That's one of the main reasons that the hat needs to go. When John and Irene are together in Battersea, one of the texts that Irene reads aloud mentions the hat.
I like your funny hat.
And later, when Irene is ridiculing Sherlock for believing that she's in love with him, she mockingly brings up the hat, again tying it to false assumptions of heterosexuality.
Sentiment? What are you talking about?
You.
Oh dear God. Look at the poor man. You don't actually think I was interested in you. Why? Because you're the great Sherlock Holmes, the clever detective in the funny hat.
At the very end of the episode, 2 of the texts we see mention the hat. One is the one we saw earlier about her liking the hat, and the other is Irene telling Sherlock that the hat actually suits him. These being placed alongside blatantly flirty messages tie the Deerstalker to heterosexuality even more. In the next episode, when John and Sherlock break into Baskerville, they're recognized by Dr. Franklin, who brings up the hat once they're alone.
I knew he wanted help, but I didn't realize we were going to contact Sherlock Holmes. But don't worry, I know who you really are. I'm never off your website. Thought you'd be wearing the hat, though.
The hat has become such an important part of Sherlock's public image that it's getting to the point that people can't recognize him without it. Similar to the way that some people believe that Sherlock was out of character in Series 3 and The Abominable Bride. They still believe he's an unfeeling sociopath when really he's a small gay nerd. Sherlock insists more than once that the hat wasn't his. He doesn't want to be associated with it.
Thought you'd be wearing the hat, though.
That wasn't my hat.
I hardly recognize him without the hat.
That wasn't my hat.
Even though he's still hiding his feelings from the world, he doesn't like everyone believing he's something he's not. Other people love it though, particularly the people at Scotland Yard who hate Sherlock and so believe the lies.
Your chips in.
Sherlock doesn't want to wear the hat, but is forced to by public demand. Literally a hat of someone else's choosing. He only puts it on when John tells him to, and unwillingly plays along with what the public expects of him.
Yeah, Sherlock, put it on.
Just get it over with.
In the next scene, though, it's clear he isn't happy about it. He's complaining about his public image. People have pointed out to me that Sherlock's fall from grace in the public eye closely mirrors Oscar Wilde's trial, and I plan to work with a couple of people who know a bit more about that than I do in the future to make a video on it, but that fact makes this conversation about the hat as part of Sherlock's public persona resonate even more strongly. That and the fact that at the same time Sherlock is complaining about the hat, John is complaining about the press implying things about their relationship.
Boffin. Boffin Sherlock Holmes.
Everybody gets one.
And what?
Tabloid nickname. Subo. Nasty Nick. Shouldn't worry, I'll probably get one soon.
Page 5, column 6, first sentence.
Why is it always the hat photograph?
Bachelor John Watson.
What a hat is it anyway?
Bachelor? What the hell are they implying?
Is it a cat? Why's it got 2 fronts?
It's a deerstalker. Frequently seen in the company of Bachelor
Stalk a deer
John
with a
Watson.
hat. What are you meant to do? Throw it?
Confirmed Bachelor John Watson.
Some death frisbee?
Sherlock totally doesn't get the point of the hat, but it's now that their relationship is starting to come into the spotlight that John says they need to be more careful. He was already involved with one person whose name was dragged through the mud by the press, and he saw what that did to him. He doesn't want that to happen to Sherlock too.
Okay, this is too much. We need to be more careful.
It's got flaps. Ear flaps. It's an ear hat, John. What do you mean more careful?
The writers were clearly having fun with this next line.
I mean, this isn't a deerstalker now, it's a Sherlock Holmes hat. I mean that you're not exactly a private detective anymore. You're this far from famous.
Oh, it'll pass.
It better pass. If the press will turn, Sherlock, they always turn, and they'll turn on you.
When Sherlock appears not to understand why John would care about what people say about him, John himself picks up the hat and moves it aside, maybe reminding himself that this is the best he can expect from Sherlock.
It really bothers you?
What?
What people say?
Yes.
About me? I don't understand. Why would it upset you?
Just trying to keep a low profile. Find yourself a little case this week. Stay out of the news.
In the same episode, Kitty, a reporter, seriously, Kitty tries to pretend to be a fan with a crush on Sherlock in order to get close to him. And she comes to him wearing a deerstalker.
You're him.
Wrong toilet.
I'm a big fan. I read your cases, follow them all. Sign my shirt, would you?
There are two types of fans.
Well?
Catch me before I kill again, type A.
Uh-huh. What's type B?
Your bedroom's just a taxi ride away.
Guess which one I am.
More importantly, which kind is John? But Kitty is neither. She's putting on a false persona too, which happens to include heterosexuality. I'm not implying that she's not straight, although let's be real here, no one on this show is, but it's more the fact that the hat is again tied to women flirting with Sherlock. Once she starts being genuine, she takes the hat off.
Wow, I'm liking you.
You mean I'd make a great feature, Sherlock Holmes, the man beneath the hat?
Kitty. Riley. Pleased to meet you.
And look at the first thing she asks once it's off.
I'm just saving you the trouble of asking. No, I won't give you an interview. No, I don't want the money.
You and John Watson. Just platonic. Could I put you down for a no there as well?
As always, Sherlock very blatantly says nothing.
There's all sorts of gossip in the press about you. Sooner or later, you're going to need someone on your side.
It's subtle, but she's implying that he might want help dispelling the rumors about him and John.
Someone to set the record straight.
Which makes Sherlock very angry, which is why he reacts the way he does. He doesn't want to hide. He feels like he has to now because of Moriarty, but he wants to be free of the hat and all it represents. People who think he needs help maintaining that image disgust him.
I see someone who's hungry. I don't see smart. And I definitely don't see trustworthy. But I'll give you a quote if you like. 3 little words. You repel me.
We don't see the hat again until the empty hearse. Beejohnlocked pointed out that the next time we see it is in Anderson's Sherlock fan club. Essentially, it's a group of casuals where they all meet up to talk about case theories. One of the members, though, has an idea of Sherlock that makes Anderson very upset.
Oh.
Are you out of your mind?
I don't see why not.
I love this girl. Anderson gets very offended and tries to dismiss the theory, but she says she's taking it very seriously.
It's just as plausible as some of your theories.
Look, if you're not going to take it seriously, Laura, you can...
I do take it seriously.
Thinking Sherlock is gay is no laughing matter. And look what she says.
I don't think we should wear hats.
I missed that the first time around, and I'm so glad Beejohnlocked pointed it out because it's golden. The only fan there who doesn't think Sherlock is straight also doesn't think they should be wearing the hats. I love this show so much. Also, I'll be touching more on this later in future episodes, but imagine how easily they could have included a Johnlock theory. Something really over the top with Sherlock saying something like, "Wait for me, my love," and John going, "I'd wait for you forever," and then have it be immediately dismissed as a fantasy. Like the case of the dog not barking in the night. It's very telling that they chose not to do that. Okay, slightly sadder note now. So in this episode, Sherlock comes to the conclusion that John doesn't want to be with him anymore, that he'd be better off with Mary, and that John only really needs him in his life for the cases. So for the first time, he puts on the hat willingly for the public, to be the Sherlock Holmes that he thinks John wants him to be.
Anyway, time to go and be Sherlock Holmes.
Then in his last vow, when Janine goes to the tabloids to profit off of her relationship with Sherlock, she tells a bunch of lies about what happened between them. Guess what crops up?
I'm buying a cottage. I made a lot of money out of you, mister. Nothing hits the spot like revenge or profits.
You didn't give those stories to Magnuson, did you?
God, no.
The hat here is explicitly tied to lies about Sherlock's sexuality, because contrary to what she's telling the press, Janine mentions a few minutes later that they never had sex.
I exploited the fact of our connection.
When? Just once would have been nice.
Oh. I was waiting until we got married.
That was never gonna happen.
And that she knows what kind of man Sherlock is.
I know what kind of man you are. I wish you weren't... whatever it is you are.
Okay, The Deerstalker is a total lie, and at this point Sherlock himself associates it with what everyone else expects of him, that he be strong and smart and cold and unfeeling. He knows it's a lie, but at this point he feels like that's what he has to be. So it makes sense that when we go into Sherlock's mind, where he's violently trying to repress his feelings, he's frequently wearing the Deerstalker. It's back to 1895, where everything had to be concealed. And like in The Empty Hearse, Sherlock still believes that John just wants him around for the adventures, so he wears the hat on all his imagined cases.
Mr. Holmes.
Come, Watson, come. The game is afoot.
More than that, though, Sherlock is still concealing his heart. In the greenhouse scene, where Sherlock's imagined John is trying to understand Sherlock's desires, Sherlock is wearing the Deerstalker.
Irene Adler. Formidable opponent, a remarkable adventure.
A very nice photograph.
Why are you talking like this?
Why are you so determined to be alone?
He keeps putting on the act, but for once, John doesn't believe him. Because this isn't the real John who is so afraid of overstepping with Sherlock. This is how Sherlock wants John to be. He wants him to keep pressing, to know that the cold front he presents to the public, which goes all the way back to John having a picture of Sherlock in the hat on his blog, is a lie.
Holmes, against absolutely no opposition whatsoever, I am your closest friend.
I conceded.
I am currently attempting to have a perfectly normal conversation with you.
Please don't.
Why do you need to be alone?
If you are referring to romantic entanglement, Watson, which I rather fear you are, as I have often explained before, all emotion is abhorrent to me. It is the grit in a sensitive instrument, the crack in the lens.
Yes.
Well, there you are. You see, I've said it all before.
No, I wrote all that. You're quoting yourself from the Strand magazine.
Well, exactly.
No, those are my words, not yours. That is the version of you that I present to the public. The brain without a heart. The calculating machine. I write all of that, Holmes, and the readers lap it up, but I do not believe it.
Well, I've a good mind to write to your editor.
You're a living, breathing man. You've lived a life. You have a past.
What?
Well, you must have had...
Had what?
You know.
No.
Experiences.
Pass me your revolver. I have a sudden need to use it.
Damn it, Holmes, you are flesh and blood. You have feelings. You must have impulses.
But the ghost, the bride, interrupts them before they can get anywhere.
Dear Lord, I have never been so impatient to be attacked by a murderous ghost.
As your friend, as someone who worries about you, what made you like this?
Oh, Watson. Nothing made me. I made me. Redbeard.
Good God.
And so the conversation remains unresolved and the hat stays on. In the second half of the episode, Sherlock starts running through several different imaginings of John, because he has no idea how John really feels about him. At one point, when they're going out to find Mary, John shoves the hat at Sherlock and tells him to wear it because he's Sherlock Holmes.
Not that one. This one.
Why?
You're Sherlock Holmes. Wear the damn hat.
This is the same stairwell where Sherlock apparently willingly put on the hat in The Empty Hearse, and that's telling us that he felt forced to wear it by John's expectations then too. Even now, he still thinks that's what John wants from him. But by the end of the episode, he realizes that he's wrong. And finally, after months, it's time to talk about the cliff scene. Can you tell I'm excited? So Sherlock keeps spiraling down into increasingly nightmarish scenarios, and at the deepest, darkest point of his subconscious, he's stuck on the Reichenbach Falls with Moriarty.
Oh, I see. Still not awake, am I?
He starts off wearing the hat. He tries to challenge Moriarty, who is already hinting that Sherlock already knows what Moriarty represents.
The setting's a shade melodramatic, don't you think? For you and me? Not at all. What are you? You know what I am. I'm Moriarty, the Napoleon of crime. Moriarty's dead. Not in your mind. I'll never be dead there. You once called your brain a hard drive. Well, say hello to the virus. This is how we end, you and I. Always here, always together.
Sherlock is afraid of this, of ending up alone with all of his worst fears still tormenting him, but he tries to play it off like he's cool.
You have a magnificent brain, Moriarty. I admire it. I concede it may even be the equal of my own. I'm touched. I'm honored. But when it comes to the matter of unarmed combat on the edge of a precipice, you're going in the water. Short ass.
Predictably, the second that Moriarty lunges at him, he's immediately overpowered and the hat flies off. The hat fell off from that illustration from the final problem too, to show that Sherlock Holmes wasn't in control, that he was doomed. Without his hat, Sherlock is fully exposed now. There's no hiding.
Oh, you think you're so big and strong, Sherlock? Not with me!
Moriarty knocks Sherlock to the ground and continues beating him. He punctuates each blow with another taunt.
I am your weakness! I keep you down! Every time you stumble, every time you fail, when you're weak, I am there!
Moriarty is explicitly Sherlock's weaknesses, and Moriarty has been shown throughout the series, and this episode especially, to be blatantly gay.
It's a dangerous habit to finger loaded firearms in the pocket of one's dressing gown. Or are you just pleased to see me? I like your rooms. They smell so manly. By the way, you have a surprisingly comfortable bed. It's on the tip.
He is Sherlock's weaknesses. Sherlock is afraid to be gay. To add insult to injury, Moriarty is hitting him in the place where Mary shot him.
I am there!
Sherlock feels like it's helpless to fight back.
No. Don't try to fight it. Lie back and lose!
Moriarty drags Sherlock to the edge of the cliff and repeats that they have to go over together, because part of Sherlock believes this is how he's doomed to end, dragged down by the weight of all his fears and unspoken desires.
Shall we go over together? It has to be together, doesn't it? At the end, it's always just you and me!
But if the cliff represents all the deepest parts of Sherlock, it doesn't just have his worst fears, it has his greatest hopes too. And deep down, Sherlock knows in his heart of hearts that his fears are wrong, because it was never always about Sherlock and Moriarty, or even Sherlock ending up alone with all his fears. That's never been the story. And finally, he realizes the truth.
At the end, it's always just you and me!
Professor, if you wouldn't mind stepping away from my friend, I do believe he finds your attention a shade annoying.
That's not fair, there's two of you.
There's always two of us. Don't you read The Strand?
It's been about the two of them since The Strand. John throws Sherlock his hat back, and here it ties in more to that illustration from the final problem. Things are being set right. Sherlock doesn't have to go over the falls with Moriarty. He can stand triumphant at John's side. He's not putting back on his persona. He's more warm and open here than we've ever seen him. He calls John by his first name, a display of intimacy, which John draws attention to as being unusual, but then says he wouldn't be surprised to find that they were that intimate.
On your knees, Professor. Hands behind your head.
Thank you, John.
Since when do you call me John?
You'd be surprised.
No, I wouldn't.
And compliments John on his brains and his looks.
So what's he like? The other me, in the other place.
Smarter than he looks.
Pretty damn smart, then.
Pretty damn smart.
It gets so bad that the dark part of his mind interrupts and tells him to run off and elope with John.
Ugh, why don't you two just elope, for God's sake?
Moriarty doesn't belong in this moment. He shouldn't be intruding.
Impertinent.
An elopement implies that there's something to be ashamed of.
Offensive.
They deliberately set up the wording so it sounds like they do agree to get married.
Actually, would you mind?
Not at all.
And John shoves all of Sherlock's worst fears off the cliff. They're left standing alone on the cliff's edge.
It was my turn.
Good, sir.
John asks Sherlock how he'll wake up, and Sherlock approaches the edge.
So how do you plan to wake up?
Oh. I should think like this.
You sure?
Unlike earlier in the episode, he's no longer afraid of the fall. Earlier, what he was afraid of was the landing, but now he knows he'll always survive a fall. When John asks how, at first it seems like Sherlock is dodging the question so the writers can throw in a catchphrase, but that catchphrase is actually the answer. How will Sherlock survive this fall and everything else he has to face? Elementary. His dear Watson will be there to catch him when he lands.
Between you and me, John, I always survive a fall.
But how?
Elementary, my dear Watson.
With his fears put to rest, Sherlock is ready to take the plunge. But before he does, there's one last thing he needs to do. Goodbye, Deerstalker. I'd say you'd be missed, but I'd be lying. As Sherlock literally and metaphorically lets himself fall in love, he has a huge smile on his face. And this new understanding has changed him. He's letting himself be warm towards John.
Miss me?
The cold mask has now fallen away for us, and we get to see his tiny gay heart. Also, since the time of recording this video, they actually released a new Setlock photo which featured the Deerstalker being stabbed through with a knife on the mantelpiece. So the Deerstalker is dead confirmed. That was so much fun. I really hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you as always to my faithful editor Stacy. You can check her out on Tumblr at Sholto. Seriously, I couldn't do any of this without her. I also need to thank Graceebook and Beejohnlocked for letting me reference their posts, and 57 Circles of Hell for giving me this idea in the first place. As always, links to everything I've referenced here, including my metas on this topic, can be found in the description below. I'm taking next week off for grad school finals, but the week after that I'll be back with more explanations about everyone's favorite gay conspiracy. Until then, try not to miss me too much, and get ready to believe.